The House Committee on Natural Resource and Tourism will come to order. Would the clerk please take attendance?
Chair Martin.
Here.
Representative St. Germain.
Here.
Vanderwall.
Present.
Outman. Hoadley.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Preston.
Here.
Bonack.
Here.
Fairbairn.
Here.
Wirtz. McFall. Scott.
Present.
Weiss.
Here.
Arbit. Foreman. Myers Phillips.
Here.
Wooden.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you do have a quorum.
Thank you. And Representative Vanderwall makes a motion to approve the minutes from our previous meeting. Minutes are approved by unanimous consent. We're now going to take up House Bill 4421, sponsored by Representative Kunse. He can come up and give us an overview of his bill. I didn't know if you had any other people testifying today.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for having me today, and that's the first thing I'd like to talk about.
I thought so.
I had two people lined up to testify, a small family farmer and a contractor, and both of them contacted me, and out of fear of reprisal, they decided not to testify. And it absolutely upsets me, because we're in a public meeting. I'll use the word, it upsets me greatly that we have constituents and we have citizens that are afraid of their government. So this is a really simple bill. 2 sentences, it's 1 paragraph, and all it does is it enshrines the Fourth Amendment that says Eagle, the department, has to have a warrant to come on your property. They can still investigate, they can still do all their duties, but they have to follow the rules and go before the judicial branch before they come on private property. It's 2 sentences. So really simple. I'd be glad to take any questions on it.
And I had the same response on several. And yet, we have oversight of these departments, and they don't fear us nearly as much as the citizens fear them. And that goes directly to why these bills become up anyway, and why we had hearings and the joint committees over in the Capitol building, is because of the overreach that goes beyond the scope, just bureaucratic
Correct.
Growth. And I want you mentioned today is Constitution Day. Thank you. You mentioned the Fourth Amendment. Fourth Amendment secures your house, your papers, your effects, your person.
Yes, sir.
But effects is the big word in there. Michigan Constitution, Article 1, Section 11, which all Eagle and DNR employees work under, and I mentioned DNR because we have a similar bill coming up, mentions the same things as far as persons, houses, but it says possessions instead of effects. There's several states that have that also, and they have all ruled that possessions clearly states land. Our founding fathers, under English common law, understood that they didn't want the king's men running through their property, and private property is a big thing in our founding.
Right.
Now, when people say that the open fields doctrine applies, well, it applies if you're going after taxes, because that's how it got started. It was going after revenuers during Prohibition that had stills out in the woods. And then it went into getting marijuana plants when they had illegal fields out in the woods. None of them had anything to do with wildlife management. And wildlife management was done outside of that long before and can still be done outside that. So out of the vast majority of land that's owned by private property owners, 96 or some percent of that land that's privately owned is outside of their curtilage, outside their house, outside their buildings. That does not mean it's free and clear. We passed bills for trespassing and notifying people of trespassing, clearly identifying that this is private property and what the boundaries are. We have technology now with GIS and satellite to find out exactly if you're on private property or not, especially for a law enforcement officer. We have surveillance by aircraft. If they see something that's potentially cause a crime, then that's exactly why you go get a warrant.
Correct.
If you have 40 acres and you have a pond out in the middle of 4 acres and you want to go skinny dipping, you should have the exception of privacy that you can do that on your own private property. Private property is a big thing. It's a founding principle.
Our country is founded on it.
So I just want to make clear that we're using Article 1, Section 11 for possessions that's been clearly used by state Supreme Courts, Oregon, Washington, Montana, that supersedes and make it stronger than the U.S. Constitution, which is perfectly appropriate to do. Do we have questions from Representative Weiss?
Thank you. And just thank you, Rep. Just a point of clarity, does Eagle currently have any more authority to enter private property than law enforcement does without a warrant?
So I would say yes, because of investigative purposes. So the open fields doctrine, your house is protected, your car is protected, but, and I use the term loosely, the back 40, or if you have some vacant land in the UP, they don't need a warrant for that. They can come on your property unannounced for whatever reason it is. So that is an addition to. So I don't understand. I don't understand how we ever got to that. And I believe Representative Prestin is going to talk about this with the DNR also. These are kind of combined bills, similar bills. But it's a reining in of the department. Why shouldn't they have to go get a warrant? I believe you're an attorney, yes?
I'm not.
You're not.
But it's
Well,
kind of you to think so.
That was meant to be a compliment. Why wouldn't they have to go get a warrant? I don't understand why we would pass that up, why we would take away the judicial branch to protect our freedom.
But law enforcement currently would have to get a warrant under similar circumstances?
Forgive me, and they told me the term, and I promptly forgot it. I'm also not an attorney. If there is imminent danger, if they see me grabbing you and I'm pulling you into the house, or there's something going to happen imminently, yes, they can come in. They don't have time. I don't have time to go get a warrant. But it has to be that situation. It can't be the situation of, I suspect they have stolen property or something like that. So, but yes, law enforcement does have to have a warrant to come in.
And if there was like an imminent spill or something, would that apply? Would this
Yes.
apply here if there was like an environmental catastrophe happening?
Right. There's a 55-gallon drum precipitously tipped.
Right.
yes. And
It would,
that's
this
a
would not
hypothetical.
apply. This would not apply to that.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Same as the law enforcement. This is, we don't have time.
Yeah, law enforcement acts under fleeing criminals and things that in the wildlife sense, following a poacher, crossing land, private land markers. I'll come back to someone. I'm going to get Representative Scott first.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. I think you really probably answered it a little bit, but I was just wondering, is it going to negatively, this bill, impact Eagle's ability for health and safety for the public? I think you went into it a little bit.
I don't believe so, and that is absolutely not my intent. I understand what Eagle does, but I think that we still have to, everything is a balance. We can't open our doors to unreasonable search and seizure. So, no, Eagle can still do all of their investigations. They can still come on your property, but now they need to go and say, I believe they have to testify. They have to sign the affidavit saying this is an issue, and I want a warrant to do it. So it does not restrict their investigative powers at all.
Okay, thank you.
And I would mention other law enforcement agencies. Could they implement open fields doctrine? Yes. Do they? No. They want to make sure the prosecutor has the tools and the reasons for doing that. Because when I'll use DNR, we're jumping over a little bit here, but Eagle might do the same thing because they use DNR officers, environmental officers, to do their investigations.
Correct.
That's what does cross lines here. They can leave cameras on your property. You wouldn't know it. Now, that's craziness in my book.
That is offensive.
That's absolutely crazy, insane in my book, that they come in illegally because they suspect something, don't know anything's really happening, they just want to see, and they leave cameras behind to gather information.
Mm-hmm.
That is an overreach that I just can't, that's why we need these bills. Representative Myers-Phillips.
Yes, thank you, Representative, for your testimony. I know we had a similar discussion earlier in the year here, so I do have similar concerns with this. Of course, we respect private property rights in Michigan, in the U.S., but I wanted to pick up on the issue of balance that you mentioned. And there's a balance with public stewardship, and there's a balance with public safety. So Hester versus U.S. is still good law. That's a Supreme Court case. And basically that says that the Fourth Amendment does not apply when the open fields doctrine is in place. So we're not talking about correct me if I'm wrong, we're not talking about going into anybody's home. We're not talking about peeking under the beds and in the closet or any of that stuff where you should have a warrant. But we're talking about things that are out in the open that the particular officer may have a good reason to look into. So, you know, there's a balance. Like I said, there's a balance here. And I'm concerned that we might be erring because of some more isolated incidents, erring and not giving enough attention to the public stewardship and the public safety component of this here. So those are my concerns. And I just think we need to.
I'm also
going to
guess you're an attorney.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. 1 for 2. So we still have, you know, if you can see it from the road, it is still public. So they can drive around. We had talked about aerial surveillance. I don't know how high, you know, Google Earth flies over my property and they take pictures. I don't understand. That's still there. And I'm not asking the Eagle or DNR or any of our law enforcement people to give up any of their investigative authority. They're still going to do that. What I'm saying is I think it's gone too far. When they can come on your property without notice, leave cameras, to do things like that, to me that's an overreach. So all I'm asking is, well, you should have to get a search warrant. Go before a judge. You know, this is the enforcement. Go before the judicial branch and testify that it's necessary. So I'm not asking anybody to give up investigative powers.
Right. I do understand that as well. And I still think there's a balance, you know, with the public stewardship and the public safety component. It does take time to get a warrant. And in some areas, you know, that might take longer time than others, right? You know, when you're trying to get a hold of a district court judge, and who knows what their caseload is like and what the hours are like. So I am comfortable with trusting our, of course, you don't have blind trust in anybody these days.
Right.
But our departments have guidelines, you know, to follow, and shouldn't just, I don't know, run wild and intruding on things they shouldn't intrude on. But it is my opinion anyway that we need to continue to allow our departments to have the discretion to exercise. You know, if it seems like something is going on, of course, a good representative like yourself, we'd have no worries about you, but that's not the case with everybody and every property.
Is
So
my
I do
halo
think
reflecting? Is that the
it
issue?
is.
I
It's
understand.
there. It's there.
We're going to disagree on that. And this is, I love my country, but I don't trust the government. So I disagree, and I think you should have to have a warrant to come on private property. But I understand your point.
Yes, and I'm glad
That's
you
why
brought that up.
we went over, and Catherine is here to help with the legal side of it. We're not affecting anything with investigative powers.
Yes, I'm glad you did bring that out, and it's okay for us to disagree. Reasonable
Of course.
minds can disagree. I myself, you know, I believe that, you know, as long as we continue to invest the resources and train people and proper etiquettes and protocol, and most of all, the law, right, and have accountability measures and consequences if officers were to go outside of those things, then we can maintain that balance between private property, public stewardship, and public safety.
Thank you for your comments.
You know, and not to get it, I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to debate, you know, good law. Hester may be the law based on prohibition. George Mason University doesn't think it's good law.
Right.
So it uses just the first 5 words instead of the whole 54 words of the amendment. Doesn't include any discussion on the 9th Amendment, that things aren't explicitly mentioned. And since land is not specifically mentioned, they kind of hang their hat on that. But in the state of Michigan, we do have possessions in our Constitution.
Right. And if we're going to err, if there's a gray area and you're asking me to pick a side, it's going to be on individual liberties. It's not going to be on government enforcement.
Right, and that's you know, going back to Justice Marshall, going back to all these things that created and started forming our basis of what we do in a modern society under this new form of government and this new republic that we call the United States of America, and our new Constitution, which has stood now almost 250 years, and this is the anniversary.
Coming up.
Yeah, but of the Declaration, but 1787 for the Constitution.
Okay.
The same, you know, whether or not Thurgood Marshall said, freedom of speech isn't expressively speech just because it says speech. It doesn't, the Fourth Amendment doesn't say land, so therefore does it exclude land. The broadest scope of the language for a liberty-loving society would include the things that we deem private, necessary, personal, what we do for freedom and liberty. So, Representative Vanderwall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative. I appreciate you bringing forward this bill. I guess the next question is this: this bill expand to drone use? And I'm not sure that that's included in this bill, but as you know, more and more surveillance is done with drone use and over private property. I know on a private property right versus a neighbor using a drone to check out certain things. Does this expand into that, or is that some consideration that you would?
I would love to talk about that, but this doesn't. And I don't know how high, again, in theory, we own to the center of the earth and to the top of the moon from our property, but we don't control our airspace. So planes can fly over our property. I'm not familiar with drone law, so this doesn't touch on it. This is just physical entrance to it.
All right, I'd be glad to talk to you. I know the federal law already is in place in aviation because it's considered aviation, but it excludes state law and some of those other things. So to codify federal law, I believe that we should see if that is something that would work in this. If not, then I think we need to look at a completely separate bill. But I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Great point. Thank you.
Yeah, so a bill may be necessary. I also should make mention your comment about sending the Earth to the moon. If there's a mountain next to you and they can see from the mountain into your backyard, you don't have an expectation of privacy. But if on ground level there's nothing like that and you have a privacy fence, they can't go peeking over the privacy fence. So yes, there are limits to.
Right.
Representative Hoadley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Kunse and Prestin, for bringing forth this legislation. I think it's a great step forward to protecting the rights of our people. One question, and getting to know you well, I know you do your due diligence. So through that, working this bill, were you given any examples where this type of government overreach from Eagle or the Department of Natural Resources saved the day, saved lives, or made a meaningful impact by pretty much violating somebody's rights?
Never, not a time-sensitive one. It's never been Representative Altman's going to dig a pond tomorrow if I don't go inspect his property. So, Eagle does good work. The DNR does good work, and I commend our law enforcement officers. I'm not trying to take that away. This is more, I just need you to follow the procedure. You need to go get a warrant to enter private property. So the examples I've always been given are, yes, you're doing good work, but couldn't you have followed the intent of Article 1, Section 11?
So you weren't given any
No.
specific examples of where this really just saved the Great Lakes from definite peril?
No. And our Representative Myers-Phillips is going to object because this is secondhand information. There's no objecting. There's no objecting. Thank you.
We're not in court today. We're not in court
The people that I had coming to testify today had stories of the overreach. They came in, DEQ came on their property, alleged a violation, and then years and dollars later said, you know what, you're right, there wasn't a violation. But I can't get my money and I can't get my time back. So what they had were examples of the overreach. And unfortunately, both of them came to me independently and said, you know what, we're not the highest sticking nail right now, and I don't want to get hammered by Eagle. So it was, at first I was upset, and now I'm just angry, if those are difference without a distinction, but that we have citizens afraid of the bureaucracy. They did not want to come testify in an open meeting.
We had lots of complaints, lots of examples. Yes. None of them were of an eminent, toxic type thing or whatever, damage to the environment.
That
from
is still
Eagle. What we had was a farmer going through the proper procedures, looking up what I'm supposed to do, contact what the state mandates they to do, to contact the state mandated office for soil diversion in their county. They go to the proper county authority, they get the proper permit from the county for soil diversion, and then all of a sudden, without notice, an Eagle agent walks onto their property. In my case, the latest one I had, the neighbors saw somebody standing out on somebody's private property, wanted to ask what they're doing there. Well, I'm from the state, and this is violation. It's like, well, he's not home right now. It doesn't matter. I'm from the state. Didn't knock on the door. Didn't announce.
Right.
There's no imminent danger to anybody there. What is an agent of the government doing on their private property? That is not a acceptable use of open fields. It's not like there's an imminent danger or there's not an investigation going on. It's just curiosity. Something that could be seen standing out from the 35 feet of the roadway. So these are the type of questions that they're afraid of, and then if they will they be able to get another permit if they start making waves.
Right.
Yes. Representative Warts.
Thank you, Chair. I believe, as the words of Ronald Reagan would say, is the reason they were there is because they're from the government and they're here to help. But that's not actually my question. My question is, so under current law, who would you say has more power, or who would it be easier to investigate something, a state trooper or a DNR conservation officer?
And again, I'm going to defer to Representative Prestin on the DNR. Can I defer that question to him? Mine is on Eagle.
We're going to get that testimony again. But I'll say they both have equal authority. It's just whether or not the MSP doesn't train to teach and use the open fields doctrine like the DNR does.
Well, it seems to me that the correction officer has more authority.
Conservation officer.
Conservation officer. Yeah.
Again, I'm going to re-defer to
Okay.
Representative Prestin on that.
Thank you.
Representative Wooden.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Representative, for your testimony this afternoon. And just for the record, like everyone else, since it's been brought up, I'm not an attorney.
Very good.
But I have some questions on case law here because as I'm reading your bill, and it is very brief, thank you, you reference that this will not impact a conservation officer or Eagle official from entering into the property without a warrant in case of a emergency or reasonable belief that there's imminent danger. I'm assuming that's tied to some kind of case law, or is it somewhere else in statute that provision that they can enter the property without a warrant in that instance be done?
Representative Myers-Phillips, what is the term I'm looking for? It's not imminent danger.
Well, I'm having trouble getting in your head.
Exigent circumstances.
Exigent, yeah.
Right?
I'd also mention this under the DNR, and one of the reasons Representative Preston's coming back up is we had listed all these things, chasing criminals and so forth. That is a principle of law enforcement. Doesn't have to be put in statute to tell one agency over another agency what they're to train on. So it's a common practice for chasing criminals, exigent circumstances, imminent danger. That's a training principle thing for law enforcement. It's not going to be in statute.
Thank you. And then my second question was, given, was referenced before the timing variances between what and the docket the judge might have before reviewing a request for warrant, have you at all seen or been able to ascertain if this is going to increase our need for additional judges or judicial caseload?
I have not seen that. It's hard to quantify because we don't know how often Eagle is coming onto property without permission. It doesn't get reported. And it's one of the situations where if they do come onto your property, who do you report it to? They're currently not violating the law. So there's not a number there that I can look at and say, are there other ways you could do this? Or can you come up and say, excuse me, Representative Wooden, may I come on your property? They can still come on. You can come on the property with permission of the owner. Of course, that's still there in statute. So I haven't been able to put a number to it, but to me, this is such a small, no, I don't see any burden on the judicial branch.
Thank you.
And that is the case. They can ask permission
Of course.
of the landowner.
Of course.
Representative St. Germain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't see Eagle here today, but I assume they oppose the bill, correct?
They have been slow to respond.
Okay.
So
I guess you just answered.
I'll be reading their card.
Okay.
they do have a card. Very good.
Okay. Do you know specific reasons or just the obvious?
I mean, I've yet to meet a bureaucracy that would like to give up authority.
Okay.
I haven't ever seen it in my life.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Representative Weiss?
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just a few more clarifying questions. My concern is around, and again, also, I'll repeat again, not a lawyer, so there may be some case law that clearly defines this, but it seems like there could be a lot of gray area between what isn't like, appreciate the assist from the audience, whatever the word is, what the imminent danger, imminent threat could be if it's an oil spill or something else, versus something, if that would be considered an imminent threat potentially or not, and like how you would define that and where that confusion might be. If, for example, property has a river that runs through it and there is an oil spill upstream and Eagle wants to get on the property to investigate to see how far down it's come. And also, like, do they have a way of knowing in that instance on the ground if they're even on private property? Is that clearly marked? Like, right. There may be other instances where they could end up, there could end up being a court case where there were no bad intentions. Mm-hmm. They were just trying to do their job, but maybe the markings weren't clear, or maybe they thought it was an imminent threat, but a judge might disagree.
Understand, and that, and again, not to put words in our attorney's mouth, but that is the fruit of the poison tree. So if they violate that statute, then whatever they find is not admissible in court. So I use, as a deer hunter, it's called Onyx, O-N-X, and it means like X marks the spot. And it is incredible to walk around the Manistee National Forest, and it will track exactly where you're at, and it says, well, here's who owns this property and their owner. So the burden is not on the landowner to say, this is my property. The burden is on the enforcement officials to know where you're at. You know, you come November 15th, you can't just show up and say, well, I want to deer hunt here. No, you have to know that it's available to deer hunt. So as far as the exigent, again, Myers, Representative, exigent? Very good. As far as the exigent strategies, circumstances, those are established through case law. So clearly, if I grab you or if I steal your car, you know, if they're in pursuit, they can do that. Now it becomes an issue of, well, I saw a drum, an oil drum on your property. You know, now we are there. But again, if there's a gray area, we have to go to the individual rights. If there's a gray area, it has to go to the individual. It can't go to the government.
I hear that, but if you have a drum on your property that's pouring into a river, that's not just affecting your property.
Correct. That I agree.
And would that be considered?
In my opinion, yes.
Right, but you and I aren't lawyers, so that's why I'm saying, like,
That's
maybe
true.
it should be more clearly defined in the statute.
It would be. I think case law is established elsewhere on exigent circumstances. I'm looking for free legal advice.
I mean, right, well, I don't know if it's my turn or not. But.
Mr. Chair, may she comment on that?
Sure.
Thank you.
I mean, my comment, you know, just, I mean, right now, the state of the law gives discretion to our officers. It's not, they don't have a free pass to just roam around people's property.
Right. Objection, relevancy. We're talking about exigent circumstances. Is there case law for exigent circumstances?
Yes, there is. I mean, in this
Thank you.
context. Well,
Next issue.
I'm not done yet.
Oh,
Okay.
I don't have
a.
where's my
into
gavel?
The conversation, Representative.
Right.
You can't bring me in and kick me back out before.
Try it. I got to try.
I was sitting here quietly for a second, but basically, you know, our officers, they don't have a free pass to just go roaming around people's property for no reason. I mean, there does have to be a reason according to the law. And what I'm hearing here today, there was a question asked about,
Right.
whether did the department present any evidence of them exercising their rights under the law to inspect property? Did that save the day in any way? You know, what I'm listening for is a little bit of the inverse. You know, where was the, particular cases, annoyance, inconvenience? Where is the case of, such harm that was done by the state following the status quo of the law.
So-
and if there was such harm, where is the complaint?
So
You
we
know?
don't have testimony today under an egregious spill, toxic type thing from Eagle. What we have in testimony to myself, my office, and to others is agents of the Eagle showing up on private property and just walking out there and looking at, oh, we saw an excavator out there, we're going to look at it. Not knocking on the door, not calling ahead and saying we're going to be out there at 3 o'clock and you'll be home. There's no purpose for them to be there. They're assuming that all citizens are bad actors in my theory. And they're from the state, and we're going to correct it because they overrule the county, even though they dictate the county to do certain things. So it's an overreach of just the inspection of Eagle going out on the property, not as a crime, not as a law enforcement person, but a lot of this stuff is using open fields doctrine just to enter somebody's property because they think there's something's wrong going on without ever contacting the landowner.
Correct.
That's the overreach for Eagle. Now, we're going to have testimony on DNR, which might go to your question.
Correct. And that touches on Representative Wooden's. There's not a number. Who do I report it to? I can't call Eagle and say, get off my property. They're going to say, thank you, no. They're not breaking the law. I think they should be. I think coming on someone's property without permission is breaking the law. And I want to clarify that.
And we do have bills going to trespassing just this year that we,
Yes.
tried to clarify this. And then signs get ripped down and so forth. We've had all kinds of testimony, Representative Vanderwall and so forth. Why aren't the law enforcement people taking care of the crime of my signs being torn down when I'm trying to comply so people know not to trespass? It doesn't say just no hunting. It says no trespassing on my signs, which goes to the law enforcement would also know that it's posted in its private property. Anyway, we're going to move along, and I want to get these questions to Representative Kunse answered quickly so we can give Representative Prestin time, because a lot of these questions are going to be for Representative Prestin also. So, Representative Weiss.
I just actually had a quick follow-up, Chair, on your point. If I could ask you, or perhaps both of you, just a clarifying point, because I think what you're describing to me is in addition to the legal concerns, is a customer service concern, because if the department is sending people to people's properties to investigate, you would hope that they would be knocking on the door first, right? And so I'm wondering, were there conversations that were had with the department about policy when they are entering people's property, that they are at least attempting to knock and notify the owner that they are present and why they are there?
Right. And to me, that goes back to the golden rule. That's how I would want to be treated. So if I were to show up, that's how I would, if I were to enter your property, that's how I would treat you. No, I have not had that conversation with the department of, I'd like to change this policy. I'm going to go one step further saying, you will, not I'm asking. So this is more of a, I'm telling you to do this, not I'm asking you to do this.
Understood. I'm just wondering, like, what the policy is it being followed, those sorts of things, if those conversations have
I see.
happened with the department.
Representative Hoadley.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. So we're talking a lot about the authority and overreach of government officials. I think we're missing another element, which is their safety, right? I think this would have an element of officer and department officials' safety as well, of walking onto private property unannounced. As being a private property advocate myself, I'd be pretty concerned with seeing somebody walking around my property, and it could create maybe a dangerous situation for those officers, or somebody that's not in uniform, like an Eagle representative that's walking around in a pair of khakis and a polo shirt, right? So I think that is an element that we need to maybe consider on this too, is the safety of our officers and government officials walking on property unannounced, private property unannounced.
Great point.
Thank you, Representative Kunse. We'll give you a break. We'll let
you, Mr.
Representative
Chair.
Preston pick up. And
Thank you, committee members. I appreciate, those are good and thoughtful questions. And Mr. Chair, if it's not an opposed, I have been asked to stay for the next testimony.
that's fine. And I know you have a personal testimony too on these issues. That's how you ran across this stuff. So
Yes, sir.
we're going to have Greg Eagle, President of Michigan Resource Stewards, in opposition. But since Representative Kunse is going to sit here, and these questions have been so blended, we're going to go through Representative Preston's before we get to our Zoom testimony. Is he on Zoom? Do we know? Okay, so that all these questions can be asked at one time and addressed at one time in opposition to. Representative Preston?
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for inviting me today to discuss my updates to the legislation I brought before you earlier. Before you draft H1 substitute, after our last hearing, it became clear we needed a simpler way to address the open fields doctrine, the department, and its subjective application across the state of Michigan and the Upper Peninsula and how it affects the people. While not all conservation officers engage in abusing the open fields doctrine, DNR leadership is not committed to a position of reform that would improve their relationship with the public. Just like Representative Kunse, I have several, I mean, we're talking hundreds if not thousands of members in the Upper Peninsula that are terrified of the DNR will not testify publicly. The previous version tackled specific scenarios, but the department raised public safety concerns in their response. We sought to collaborate with the department to craft legislation that protects private property rights while ensuring conservation officers can fulfill their duties. Unfortunately, the DNR would not engage in any meaningful discussion about how they could better respect the privacy of law-abiding citizens. Instead, they focused on how they felt singled out. They dismissed the concerns that our constituents have that they brought to us, concerns that have led to the bills like these being introduced for several terms now. Working with legal counsel, we simplified the language to clearly state that open fields doctrine does not apply to searches by conservation officers. This change achieves our intent of protecting private property while safeguarding public safety. And I look forward to your questions.
And I want to piggyback on Representative Hoadley's comment. I go back to, it's never happened to me, but I'd be a fear I would have. So I have had a problem with porcupines in my property up north. Now, I think the ice storm took care of most of those limbs, so I may not have the same, but I've stand out there with an unholstered pistol looking at the top of the trees and hear noise behind me. I know my 40 acres. I know where my hills are. I know where my roads are. I know my backstops. So when I turn around and I have a handgun already pulled, what's that going to do if I run into an officer that I have no expectation to be there? That's when you rise to the concern of the danger and the safety. I think these are real life scenarios that could happen, and I'm concerned about their safety and confrontation with myself too. Like I said, I know my personal property, so I know where I'm pointing and what's my backstops are, and I'm not expecting another person to be standing there unless he's a trespasser.
Correct.
Comments? Representative Scott.
Thank you so much. And to your point, Chair, has it been an incident where somebody was hurt or killed that brings about, this legislation or the attempt to have the legislation?
No, I think at the end of the day, it's about an expectation of privacy. We have, castle doctrine, open fields is similar to it, and the expectation of property rights and the privacy thereof. I mean, how far do we go? Do we enshrine, stop and frisk? There are so many issues that deal with personal rights, personal property rights. Mm-hmm. And my property, my 200 acres, that's my property. Mm-hmm. I have ex-legislators that have reached out to me, and they're also terrified to speak in public, that they've had their blind knocked on opening morning of deer season to check whether or not they have their licenses and whether or not their weapon was loaded. One of them told me their check was whether or not their weapon was loaded before daybreak. Mm. I mean, that's an instance where a conservation officer is purposely going on over 40 acres of land, going to that person's ground line, knocking on their door, looking for a violation. That's not how open fields, number one, I don't think that open fields should be even constitutionally allowed in Michigan. And it's definitely not the intent or the spirit of the law. Exigent circumstances is completely covered in my bill, but simply, and the DNR told me that we follow the game. Well, you know what? That's my land, and there's no better steward of the environment than the sportsmen and the landowners of that land. Right. And the fact that they're going on and purposely looking for violations of loaded firearms before daybreak is just preposterous.
Okay, I hear you, but there have been no reported incidents of anybody being hurt so far. Is that correct? That you know of?
No, I actually do know it, but can I cite the specific? No, I can't. Garden Peninsula comes to mind, and some of the other regions of the UP. But yes, there have been issues where the temperature has risen to the point where I do believe there was an injury and or a death. And there have definitely been some situations that could have risen to that level. This is a major friction point between private property owners and the DNR, and the failure of them to rein in their own policies is what brings this legislation before this committee almost every term.
Thank you.
And following the game, if they come knock on your blind, there's no game to follow, and you're going to be sitting there for an hour or so waiting to recover.
You get up at 3 a.m., go out there just to have your whole hunt blown.
Now, and the other thing that raises my question, if say your blind is on your 200 acres, how'd they know it was there?
They sit and fly with their airplane over the top of me all day long, and I know I can't do anything about that.
That would be one way to
find it. They know where my blind is. I get it, but you know what? Walking 60 acres to my blind.
And I watch Wardens of the North, and they find that the application for the deer in the wife's name and the temperature of the deer do not comply. The deer carcass is much colder, and then the morning of license was bought in the spouse's name. So I mean, things like this happen, and they have investigative tools outside of having to come inside 40 acres.
And on top of it, the taking of legal game, it's.
I know. I'm just saying there's other investigative things without coming.
There are so many overlapping issues regarding this, and for me, this is very much a no-brainer. I think if you take analogies and move it over to more urban centers, you could easily draw comparisons as to expectations of privacy and personal property rights, and the subjective application of what is curtilage. I mean, I've gotten different stories regarding, what is curtilage, which buildings are a part of curtilage, which ones are not. It's subjective to the officer on the scene. There's no standardized format. This entire thing is just creating a tremendous amount of division between personal property owners and the government, and it's needless. Their inability to put their own policies and procedures to protect the citizenry is the reason why we're here. And I think it's our duty to act.
Two things. First of all, I want to go back to, like you said, private property. We're a liberty-loving society. So English common law of private property comes in, and then you remove the king out of that because that's what we have this country for. And you have that liberty that we're practicing. Blackstone, when they say come on a trespassing and damaging property. The old English common law definition of damaging property, bruising grass, disturbing soil with your footprint. That is not your property, and you just touched it. Right. So these are things that freedom-loving, liberty-loving societies want to protect. We want to watch out for this overreach. Do you know if, or do you suspect that there's been a decrease or an increase or disruption in hunting licenses, people actually going on the field because of having to deal with the DNR?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You had a place for sales. Did you ever notice it like that for sales for licenses or?
Yes. So my old truck stop, we sold hunting licenses there. We bought it in 06, and summertime traffic, we were incredibly busy during the summertime. And then everybody would go back to school. When deer hunting came, it was almost like summer was back. I mean, our truck stop, my wife and I's, was just alive. The sales were off the charts. And really, when they put in the new base license structure, and we also had a concurrent drop in whitetail populations due to 3 really tough winters, it fell off like a rock. And most of it was out-of-state driven, and they were appalled by the way that they're treated in the woods because at that time there was a heavy saturation, the price for the tickets, and then the lack of deer. And the deer did come back for a short time. Now it's worse than it's ever been. But the hunters never returned. Back in the 70s, the state forest that I'm right next to and I bought was featured in a Field and Stream article. And right after that article broke, that area of Menominee County exploded with hunters. And it stayed that way all the way until, I would say, probably 2010. And like I said, it's never been the same. Opening day now for the people that now own my gas station is just another day of wintertime. And it's sad, because that used to be what we were known for.
Well, folks, we got a lot more questions here, so let's get through them as quick as we can. We have a presentation here that I want to get to by 1 o'clock. Representative Wooden.
Thank you, Chair. Just to be just a clarifying question, just because you've mentioned Eagle and DNR being the two law enforcement entities to use this, I believe the chair referenced he doesn't believe local law enforcement utilizes it, leaving up to the prosecutor and the local judges to issue warrants. Just to confirm, do we know if the state police utilize the open fields doctrine, or if they also are going to get, or if they're going to a judge for a warrant?
That's an exigent circumstance question. You know, but almost all police officers that I know, being a paramedic, dealing with first responders, both a firefighter and a paramedic all the time, I have never really run into a situation where rank and file law enforcement, with the exception of the conservation officers, have abused open fields. They patrol and they really look over the public spaces. And that's what their mandate is. With the DNR, with the one brief conversation that they had with them, their excuse for the overutilization of the open fields doctrine was the fact that the one thing that they are charged with protecting, the fish and game, move across private property, which I think is just a false argument and a justification for the actions that they partake in.
And like I said, it's not that they're excluded from using it, not definitely by statute, but their practice, from when I talked to the actual law enforcement officer, their training does not include, they want to make sure the prosecutor and the system is in place, and so they just avoid any complication by not using open fields
And
doctrine.
Representative, if I may, both of these bills are department specific. So this does not address or any affect the Michigan State Police.
And if I can just clarify, you know, your local assessors or township assessors, as well as equalization, they're not allowed to walk on your land. They have to give you notice. They're trespassing if not. We had a big run-in when I was a county commissioner regarding that, and clarification was finally brought because we had assessors that were just walking on private property. So past practice throughout the state is that the landowner is supposed to be notified and permission is to be given. If another hunter shoots an animal and an animal comes onto my land, that hunter has to notify me, the landowner, in order to come on and continue to track that animal. So Michigan is riddled with situations where personal property rights are really defended, with the exception of really just the conservation officers. It's the single most powerful law enforcement agency in the state of Michigan. They have policies that none of the other law enforcement agencies would even think about engaging in, specifically open fields being one of them, the subjective aspect of what is curtilage. So in the fact that Eagle is using conservation officers as their enforcement arm makes it even more egregious in my mind.
Representative Wertz.
Thank you. So I think you just answered my question, and that's what I was just looking at in comparison. If we look at section of the law 324.1602 and the abilities of which a DNR officer has all of these rights, as you were saying, to search versus what a state trooper would have to have is probable cause, reasonable suspicion, or an imminent threat, the imminent destruction, I guess. And so this seems to me very logical. And as I just was sitting here thinking, when I first came here, I thought you guys were kind of overreacting about the DNR down in southern Michigan. We don't really have a problem. I've heard a few complaints here and there. But then I went north for 4th of July weekend and to Higgins Lake area, and I could not believe the number of DNR officers. I never saw a state trooper. I never even saw a county cop, but DNR officers were everywhere. And then I got it. And I thought, this is why you guys have so many frustrations with them. And when we look at the law and the I guess egregious rights that they have over even law enforcement, it just seems not even consistent. So thank you. I think this is
And
fair and
if I
reasonable
can-
legislation.
We have
I could just
we have to
share-
really move on. I have somebody waiting on Zoom to testify this, and I want to get to my other testimony, and we're going on 1 o'clock. So
All right.
I think there's a question been asked that's just trying for clarification that can't be asked to the sponsors afterwards.
I was just going to address Representative Scott's question about altercations.
Yeah, we can find out from the actual agencies whether or not it's been actually
Mr. Chair, do you want
contacted.
us to stay here for the Zoom testimony?
No, we'll get the Zoom testimony separate. So
Thank
Can
you,
I bring
Mr.
up one other thing?
you're the sponsor.
Just one thing.
Now, I own your bill now, though. It's clicking up and.
The only other anecdotal aspect I'll bring into this is one of the other things that really peeves me about this entire process is that the DNR will not even prosecute their cases within the counties that a lot of times that they occur in, because the prosecutors in those counties don't want anything to do with them. They disagree with the way in which that these charges were brought about, and then they're brought into counties downstate here, into sympathetic counties, and they're prosecuted down here. And case in point was just the last one regarding the game farms and the Russian board litigation that's been going on. Should have happened up in Marquette. Where is it? Down here in Ingham County.
Good point. Thank you very much. And with these bills, you also have the substitutes. We're not adopting them today, but you'll see what the whole package is because the substitute's been provided to you. And that goes to asking consent, not just the warrant. On Zoom, we have Mr. Greg Eagle from Michigan Resources Stewards. Thank you for waiting. We'll give you a few minutes to bring up yours. I think we have some written stuff from you also, so if you can just give us your what you think about these bills.
Okay, I thank you. I would have come down for it personally, but I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to speak, so I opted to use Zoom as a backup. I would like to have been there. I'm Gregory Eagle, a resident of Midland, Michigan. I'm president of the Michigan Resource Stewards. We're a nonprofit group of retired natural resources professionals, and we advocate for the use of sound science in environmental and natural resources management. I'm a decorated retired Michigan conservation officer and also spent half my career as an ECO. The steward's mantra is professionals continuing a tradition of public service. And I'm proud to say that as of this year, I've spent 50 years in natural resources public service, working for the Soil Conservation Service, DNR, DEQ, Fish and Wildlife Service, and after retirement with Saginaw Basin Land Conservancy. I'd like to thank the committee chair for his noteworthy record of public service in the military, veteran service, and public safety. My brother is a retired Veterans Employment Officer, and my father was a career Army, and I grew up moving with the Army. I'd like to make a statement to this committee in opposition to the House Bill 4073, which seeks to limit law enforcement capabilities of just one, and I emphasize just one of the hundreds of law enforcement agencies in Michigan, our conservation officers. In our current social environment, there is great public support and demand for police funding and professionalizing law enforcement, yet this bill is anti-law enforcement. We stewards have supplied the committee with our positions opposing this bill, and I hope you'll look at that information that we've supplied. This bill is bad for Michigan and worse for Michigan's fish, wildlife, and wildlife heritage. The committee public record insufficiently articulates the need for House Bill 4073 and statements that have included that other than law enforcement agency rarely use the open fields warrantless search option. I challenge that characterization and would assert that if House Bill 4073 were to apply to all police agencies, sheriff departments, and state police, I would be joined in opposition by hundreds of officers at this hearing. This doctrine is regularly applied for criminal searches, discerning illegal drug activity, searches for lost children and lost aged adults, wildfire detection, amongst many others. In fact, as recent as September 13th of this year, the Houghton County Sheriff's Office conducted a successful search for a Lower Michigan man in Houghton County Forest and, with the assistance of DNR conservation officers. That same activity would have occurred on private land if that was the location. Assertions that this over 100-year document is outdated and unused by most law enforcement is an untruth. I did want to make a comment that wasn't in my formal statement here. Just to clarify, the open fields doctrine is the primary test by the Supreme Court is that people are protected, not places. That's one of the foremost positions that the Supreme Courts take when they're making decisions on searches. COs live in a part of their communities and very much professional control. In my 25 years as a CO, I kept the U.S. Constitution hanging in on my office wall as a reminder of my obligations to respect the Bill of Rights, and my bosses made sure of that. The wildlife and fish of this state belong to the people of Michigan, despite their residing on private property, because wildlife cannot discern property lines. Owners of private property do not have an expectation of privacy in forests and open lands, and long-held doctrine of our highest course. Yes, there is an argument that law enforcement cannot just patrol private property on a whim, but the law allows warrantless searches based on probable cause in places where there is no expectation of privacy, such as fields, forests, airspace above, public waters flowing through, and items set out in public view. Warrantless searches are the key to successful detection and prosecution criminal behavior, with search warrants being a very small percentage of evidence gathering. In my career, I've obtained hundreds of search warrants, and they are time-consuming and often preceded by a tense worry about evidence destruction during this process. Importantly, this legislation, and the committee has referred back to Article 1 of the Constitution, but I challenged the committee to look at the Michigan Constitution that pertains to environment and natural resources. The framers of the 1963 Constitution recognized that Michigan natural resources are a serious public trust and expressly directed the Michigan legislature to pass appropriate laws for their protection and conservation. Article 4, Section 52 says, the conservation and development of natural resources of the state are hereby declared to be of paramount, I emphasize paramount public concern, in the interest of health and safety and general welfare of the people of Michigan. The legislature shall provide for the protection of the air, water, and other natural resources of the state. The limitation on primary protections of natural resources of our conservation officers to detect and enforce regulations on private land will lead to reduced protection for these public trust resources. House Bill 4073 does not place these public trust resources as a matter of paramount concern as demanded by the Michigan Constitution. This bill appears at its base vindictive against one police agency for questionable motives, and in the process violates a public trust unanimously supported by public referendum, as evidenced in the 1996 Proposal G referendum, which carried by almost 70% of the voters of Michigan. There's other ways to address the citizens' concerns. I have thoughts on that, but I'm going to end my presentation with that. But I would want to point out, since there's an Eagle bill being discussed, I am a retired environmental conservation officer. I headed up a unit of ACOs for half my career, and I am available to answer questions on that agency as well. And I'll conclude my statement, and I hope you'll listen to what I have to say. I'm willing to answer questions.
Thank you. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the testimony and your offer. We are not taking any votes on this today. We have a substitute that's not even being adopted, so it's not a done deal yet. So thank you for your offer. I do really appreciate your comments on the U.S. Supreme Court's Fourth Amendment. But since DNR officers and Eagle officers work within the confines of the state of Michigan, and they are sworn to uphold the state of Michigan's Constitution, which clearly says possessions instead of just effects. It does go to land, which has been determined by Mississippi, Montana, New York, Oregon, Vermont, Tennessee, Washington, and now South Dakota, because other states just say effects like the U.S. Constitution. So I just want to point that out, but I want to thank you for your testimony. And
if I could, I should address the fact that there was some questions as to the authority of conservation officers. In my career, I was often asked that question. My answer to anybody that asked that question was that COs have no more power than any other law enforcement officer. It's a misconception. In fact, as an example, I would lift up the fact that as peace officers rather than police officers, COs do not have the authority to do liquor law inspections. So my answer to those questions is that technically COs have less authority than police officers.
well, and one of the things we're trying to get across to not the officers, but to the bureaucrats that run the departments, that perception and their public relations has been horrible, and that's the type of things we need to work on and make sure that our liberties are just as important as the wildlife and natural resources of the state, because our personal liberties are what this country was founded on. Thank you very much. We have to now move on to another item totally, but I'm going to read in some cards. So, not willing to speak, opposing the bill, Chris Simmernack from the DNR. That's on 4703. On 4421, Josh Gramlin, Michigan Farm, not wishing to speak, supporting the bill. 4421, Tim Langholz, National Federation of Independent Businesses, supporting the bill, not wishing to speak. Derek Dalling from Genesee County Drain Commission, not willing to speak, supporting the bill. Sidney Hart from Deagle, not wishing to speak, opposing the bill. Logan, can tell it's a Voris, it's an O. Michigan League of Conservation Voters, not wishing to speak, opposing the bill. And Samantha Pickering, National Environmental Council, not wishing to speak, opposing the bill. Now we're going to move on to something I've been waiting to hear. And this is, I was very excited. So I don't know, anybody on the committee here, I don't know if I asked this before, I've heard of the Deer Management Initiative. Well, I brought it up, so hopefully you heard of it now. But I didn't hear about it until after it was published, finished, and completed, and Farm Bureau published an article on it. And luckily, there was a group that was very enthusiastic of the ideas from the Deer Management Initiative that did hear about it and have formulated a way to implement the Deer Management Initiatives. And they have created the Hunt Michigan Collaborative. And we have Ms. Farmer here is going to give us a briefing on where they're at and how it's growing and how we can bring new hunters in that never had a father, uncle, or whatever to show them about hunting, but they're curious about it. And others we live in the metro area, we want to get out there and hunt. And then, of course, the farmers and crop damage and so forth, how we can help all this and keep them off the bumpers of our car. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. So this is something you guys have been looking for a solution. And this is, I appreciate Chair Martin inviting us to be here today. This could be the change that you've been looking for. This is the change you've been looking for. And I'll let you know how it all happened. So I'm Brian Farmer. I've been in the Parks and Rec field for 28 years. I'm the chair of the M-Parks Archery Focus Area, the chair of the Southeast Michigan Urban Deer Coalition, the president of the Hunt Michigan Collaborative. And today I have a couple of our board members from the Hunt Michigan Collaborative, Mike Mitchell, Rob Steenberg, and a hunt team leader, Jesse Brancart. So basically, the Hunt Michigan Collaborative started with the DMI, and the DMI was a group of 24 individuals from the Lower Peninsula, 24 from the Upper Peninsula, to come up with new ideas to help improve deer management in the state of Michigan. And because I believe everyone believes we need to do more than what we've been doing. So this was the group that was to come up with fresh ideas, spend some time coming up with those ideas. And a lot of those talk was about regulation, regulatory ideas, which isn't going to change deer hunting. So we talked about some non-regulatory items, and some of those challenges that we face is the issues with deer density. It's deer vehicle collisions. It's crop loss. It's all those concerns that we keep hearing about that we need to do something about, the overpopulation. So the two non-regulatory items that we identified through the DMI was access to agricultural and urban areas and growing hunting. So what the Hunt Michigan Collaborative does is addresses all of the DMI challenges and all of the objectives that the DMI actually looked at by helping farmers and communities, helping create a balanced and healthy deer herd, improving habitat, growing hunting, feeding people in need, providing access to private land, connecting people and organizations, and reducing deer impacts. So the Hunt Michigan Collaborative, the idea was presented to the DMI Lower Peninsula, 24 people, and 22 of the DMI members voted yes, this is the idea. 0 said no, and 2 abstained because they don't want to put their name on anything. Sort of like the people not wanting to testify today. But so basically, it was approved. At that point, we started talking to organizations like the National Deer Association, Pheasants Forever, National Wild Turkey Federation. All those state agencies heard about this idea and jumped on board and said, this is the idea of the future. This is a change. This is something we've been looking for. This is something that is going to happen in Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Wisconsin, to help solve all those the issues they're having with wildlife and habitat improvement. So growing hunters. So if I keep hearing, I'm a hunter, I've been a hunter all my life, and part of the issue is let's increase the license sales. Let's do this, let's do that. It's never going to fix the problem. Our problem needs to be fixed by growing the number of hunters that we have in the state of Michigan. And it's only going to happen by providing that access to land and getting more organized. So we have a new way of doing that. And again, I'm going to jump into 2 different areas of what the Hunt Michigan Collaborative does. But the national trends are showing there's people starting to disapprove hunting. We need to put our money into more diverse population to get more hunters out there. And we obviously have a drop in hunting and fishing license sales. So will hunting numbers ever be what they once were, or can they be greater? So 5% of the country are hunters, 85% are not against hunting, and 10% are against hunting. So how do we connect those 90%? So we have new hunters, different ethnicities, ages, abilities, and we have seasoned hunters that are looking for more opportunities and more access, and we need to educate the public. Whether they hunt or not, they need to understand what conservation means. So how do we do that? So this is one way that we connect people. So on the Hunt Michigan Collaborative website, we work with the state coordinator of the National Wild Turkey Federation has put this calendar together, and this calendar has hunts from the DNR, it has hunter safety classes, it has conservation clubs that are offering programs. So a variety of, basically an inventory, a clearinghouse of all these activities that can get people outdoors. We can connect those people to those opportunities through marketing collectively. So where do people see this? They're already seeing it in the Parks and Recreation brochures. We want to see this in the Hunter Digest next year, organization websites. Like Chair Martin mentioned, he saw this in the Farm Bureau, an article, and this is where he saw it. The Soybean Magazine has articles. It's in a lot of places, but we just started last year from the DMI at the end of summer. So this is a brand new idea, and you'll see how quick it's grown. So each organization plays a role, and that's the success of the Hunt Michigan Collaborative, that everybody plays a role. Nobody has to do extra work. It's just connecting all these groups together. So here's an example of one of the roles that an organization plays, the M-Parks Archery Focus Area. So their role is to grow hunting and educate the public. So every community that has a Parks and Rec department or community ed, people sign up for programs, and that's what we do. People sign up for soccer, gymnastics, different activities. People of all ages, ability, and ethnicity. So one thing that's happened in Farmington Hills is an archery range is built. 5,000 people came and participated in that range the first year it was built. Since then, over 30,000 people have participated in archery at Farmington Hills, the Riley Archery Range. So that's an opportunity to turn non-hunters into hunters. Archery is a non-threatening entry sport. Everybody likes to pull a bow back and learn how to shoot a bow. But once they've learned how to shoot a bow, they can go the direction of target shooting and more competition, or potentially hunting. A lot of people haven't had the opportunity to have a family member or someone take them hunting, so we've asked them, do you want to hunt? And they said, yeah, I'm interested. That this is not just deer hunting. We're talking about turkey hunting, trapping, getting outdoors, learning more about conservation. So we started collecting data when we started that range in 2015. And in 7 years, we learned that a lot of people said they wanted to hunt, and we learned that a lot of people had never hunted before, and they didn't have anybody to take them. So we tested it out. We thought, all right, will these people really go hunting if they've never hunted and they've never even been exposed to it? So we took them deer hunting, pheasant hunting, bow fishing, goose hunting. Every hunt that we offered sold out immediately. So the idea was tested. We were on Michigan Out of Doors episode in 2018, and it showed this was happening already. We proved that it could work. So we say we need to put our dollars in a more diverse population. So we're not talking about just the typical white people that's hunted in the past. We've got a lot of different ethnicities out there that are interested in hunting that's never had that opportunity to someone to take them before. So we need a structured approach, something new, a new way to hunt. So this is an example of an organization called Our Global Kids. Well, first of all, this organization is a Black to the Land. The DNR contacted me and said, hey, we heard about the Hunt Michigan Collaborative. We got a group called Black to the Land that want to go out and hunt, but they don't have any spot to go. They don't know where to go. So I connected with another organization called Our Global Kids, and that's where these guys went out and hunt. Many of these guys were first-time hunters, and because of that Hunt Michigan Collaborative connection, that's how they were able to get out and become hunters. So you think about just archery programming alone and how that can rekindle some of that hunting heritage. These people become conservationists. They start joining clubs. They start becoming volunteers. They start getting other cohorts into it and family members. So imagine if we had more archery ranges like the one in Farmington Hills across our state, how many more recruits we could actually get. Again, 5,000 people in the first year we opened that range, over 30,000 people since we opened that range. So I lead over 50 Parks and Rec departments that have archery programs across the state. We've helped them get equipment. So I've worked with USA Archery, Easton Foundations, the ATA, and we've been able to, again, prove that if we get more communities archery equipment, we can get more people interested in hunting. So all of these communities are ready to build an archery range in their park. We need the funding to be able to do so. So think about tourism and economic impact. We're not just talking about natural resources. We're talking about tourism here. So think about, like you had mentioned earlier, owning a convenience store and the number of people that used to come buy licenses and used to go up north. We've seen this increase in participation through our archery ranges, that there's a huge opportunity there. When I talked about the data from Farmington Hills, 1,070 people filled out the survey. Those are the people that just filled out the survey. They said they spent $234,000. That's just the people that fill out the survey. That's not multiplying out the number of participants across the board. So this is the new thing that Chair Martin experienced, and this is what I want to explain. This is the new way of hunting. It's completely different than what we've ever thought before. So this is called the Hunt Michigan Collaborative Farm Tour, and the concept is what I'm about to explain. So this is a win-win-win-win. So for example, farmers have crop damage loss. They need someone to go out there and shoot the deer. They're saying, okay, I want you to come out in the summertime and shoot the deer. That's not going to grow hunting. We can't just keep giving out crop damage permits and say that's going to change the world. It's just going to shoot the deer on that farm. So what this is, the farm tour, it actually connects hunters, whether they've hunted all their lives and they needed a good spot to go, or new hunters, an opportunity to be able to go hunt. So the farmer says, I'm interested in this opportunity. So we send a scout out to that farm. And as you know, farmers don't just have 300 acres here. They have 300 acres here, a mile down the road, 1,000 acres, and so on. So there's several farms within that one farm. So it allows access to those hunters. And then at that point, any leftover deer after these hunts, we donate to Hunters Feeding Michigan or Sportsmen Against Hunger. But the way it works, it's like a recreation program. We find out 6 locations that blinds can be placed on these farms. So now we determine the 6 locations. There's going to be 2 people putting a blind per blind. So that means 12 people get to hunt on this farm during this hunt. People pay $100 to register for that hunt. And once they register, they get their spot. They get to use 2 DMAP tags that the farmer purchases. So the day of the hunt, you got 12 people showing up. You got 3 hunt leaders that actually go out and take these people to their blinds. They say state, and they go over a bunch of rules. They do weapon check. They do safety checks. They check their hunting licenses. And then they take them to their spot. They stay there till dark, and then the hunt leaders go out and pick them up. They pick their deer up, pick the people up. Everybody meets at one location after they tag their deer, and they teach people how to field dress their deer in case they haven't learned how to field dress yet. There's a lot of camaraderie. People get excited, get to know each other. They're happy. They don't want to go home that night. We stay up late. The leftover deer after the deer that they don't want to take home, a lot of people just want to donate deer and help the farmer out. We take them to a processor to get donated to Hunters Feeding Michigan. So the article that Chair Martin, I think, might have been referring to, which is there's been a few, but the first article went out last August from the Farm Bureau, and over 300 hunters emailed us back, and you multiply out the number of people that they wanted to bring on these hunts. These people were veterans. These people were from out of state that read this article. These people were dads with kids that never see deer. These people were single women looking for a spot to go, a safe spot to go where they weren't on their own. They could go out with other people and be protected and feel safe. So this is what it looks like on these farms that we're talking about. There's a lot of deer that are out there, and it is devastating in terms of crop loss. They do need help. But the package is, when we work with these farmers, we're not just going to come out there and shoot the deer in the summertime. We're going to offer 4 hunts. We're going to do a youth hunt. We're going to do an early antlerless hunt, a muzzleloader hunt, a late season hunt. And guess what? You still can have your friends and family come out there and hunt in October, November, and shoot the big buck. Because when they lease out their properties, no one's going for the does. And that's been one of the big challenges of the state of Michigan, the balanced and healthy deer herd. We need to shoot more antlerless deer. So this is what happened when we tested it out. We had 2 farms that we worked with, 3 different hunts. We had 43 hunters. We harvested 25 deer. We donated 13 deer to people in need. This year, we have 4 farms we're working with. We have 16 hunts. We're going to have up to 228 hunters. These hunts are already sold out. There's no more spots left for this whole year to be able to even participate in this program. When we advertised it last April, the ones that allowed just men sold out within 24 hours. We had some youth hunts that it didn't sell out quickly, and then women-only hunts that took time to sell out, but then they did sell out. So this is going to multiply out. Next year, 20 farms, 100 hunts. The next year after that, 40 farms, 200 hunts. Will it make a difference? So 3 generations of hunters right here in this picture. The guy on the right, named Jim Nicholson. He owns PVS Chemicals, billion-dollar company. He was the chair of the Southeast Michigan Community Foundations. The night before I met with this guy, I was praying. I'm like, all right, God, I don't have the money to buy the equipment to start and test this off. My wife is going to kill me if I try to go buy a bunch of blinds. And I happened to had a meeting with this guy to ask him the question, should it be a nonprofit or should it be owned by like the National Deer Association? He said, after a long conversation, he said it should be a nonprofit, and I'm going to give you $50,000. So that right there answered a prayer, which was my first experience of like, this is not a Brian Farmer thing. This is a God-led thing, which has been an amazing experience for me to just be the vessel. So we talk about the Hunt Michigan Collaborative Takeaways, and it's a 501c3 nonprofit. The money from this is going back to give communities archery equipment, any leftover money, and help build ranges and public parks. Because obviously, if this thing goes full circle, we could keep it sustainable and keep growing hunting. Venison, leftover venison will be donated to people in need. And this is the next step, sort of shifting gears into urban deer management, which is where I come from and why I got involved in the DMI and some urban deer hunting opportunities. So you take the same model of the farm tour and getting organized hunts, limited organized hunts, where it's only a couple year in one community, and you do that plus the sharpshooter calls to reach the harvest goal. That's what we're looking at. So our problem in cities is that the DNR says, we'll support you, go ahead and do it. And the cities say, well, I don't know what to do, help me. And you don't see a lot of urban deer management happening. So we created a model, a standardized approach to urban deer management that creates a sustainable, healthy deer population while balancing preservation and native habitats. Because that's number one thing. Our parks, the browse lines, the food in our parks, it doesn't exist. So people go eat the hospices. There's more deer vehicle crashes. We got residents complaining. It ultimately comes down to environmental concerns that we're facing. So the way that we've set this up is that a community, city leaders vote. Do we manage deer or not? Yes or no? If they say yes, it becomes regional collaboration. How do communities work together versus one city doing it? How do we start to spread that out? I've spoken with city leaders across Southeast Michigan and in the west side of the state as well. And cities are ready to make this happen. They just need the solution of how to do it. So how to do it is we do some organized hunts, keep hunting involved, sharpshooter calls equals annual harvest goal. So we integrate this idea into the community's master plan. So it becomes sustainable and it's a long-term approach. Annually this happens, and increase the volume of venison to food banks. So that's, again, helping people in need. Win, 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 win. We're going to need funding to be able to help process these deer to give food to people in need. So regional urban deer management approach, this is not just a random idea. This is going to happen. In 2026, the city of Farmington Hills, Farmington, and Southfield got together, and actually it was passed by those communities. So there'll be urban deer management taking place for the first time ever regionally in the Southeast Michigan area. So I mentioned earlier, this is a whole collaborative approach where each organization plays a role. So in urban areas, for example, it isn't city leaders trying to figure out how do we organize a hunt. It's the National Deer Association, these hunt team leaders going in there to help organize the hunts. It's another organization handling the shooting proficiency test. It's a bunch of organizations working together, solving one problem to improve deer management in the state of Michigan. So each organization plays a role. What's yours? Lastly, will hunting numbers ever be what they once were, or will they be greater? And I heard Representative Prestin speak about what it used to look like when you drove up north and the number of people that used to buy this stuff. Well, I think about that when you were talking about, we've been in Yale, Michigan, eating lunch. Every hunt we do, we stop there and eat. And you've got, again, this year, 228 people going to the Sanilac County area. And you multiply out the number of license sales that's been purchased, the amount of equipment, ammo, clothing, just by this small little thing alone. And we're going to multiply that to make it bigger. This is just the beginning. We're working with Kalamazoo Conservation District next year. On the other side of the state, we got Litter Nature Preserve in Washtenaw County. We've got some farms in Livingston County. And again, Sanilac County is expanding. So here's the towel. So this is time to start something new, and you guys play a key role in this. I'm not asking you for anything. You guys know what role you can play in it to help make this successful. There's a lot of areas that can happen. So at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions. How long was that? Because I said
perfect, and I'm still excited every time I hear that. All right, Representative Hoadley.
Real quick, thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks for bringing this to the forefront. This is great. I love that word collaborative as part of this. I know you may not be able to guess this because I look a lot younger than I am, but I spent 30 years in the archery industry. And, Michigan is known for the start of the automobile industry, but many don't realize that the commercial retail archery industry also started in the state with Fred Bear. So I guess to leave with a question, have you reached out to collaborate with the industry?
Great question. In 2016, I was invited to come to the Archery Trade Association to speak about this idea. It's been killing me. Like, I've known this could happen since 2016. So the frustration was, and I've learned again through, it's not my time, it's God's time. And when I got put on the DMI, I realized, okay, this is the one shot to make it happen. So I actually spoke to the ATA. They started contracting me out to teach level 1 and level 2 U.S. archery instructor courses. And we started talking to pro shop and manufacturers as they learned about a model of how do you get in closer to communities to be able to help educate people about equipment. NASP, for example, is National Archery in Schools program. It allows you to buy one bow, the Genesis bow, which isn't selling much equipment. But when we started Parks and Rec programming, you can buy compound bows with sights, recurves, spending more money. So if you look at this economic impact data, there's been millions of dollars from this program by doing this. So, I've been going to the ATA ever since then. So up in, every year since, and it's became a guinea pig for the industry, what we were doing here in Michigan. So USA Archery and Easton Foundations, that's how we got so much archery equipment, because they realized how big this was. They flew myself and another person in North Carolina to spread the same idea of how this model could work and really change that industry. Long answer, but that's...
Yeah, great. Real quick, Mr. Chair, if you need help connecting those dots, let me know. Like I said, I've been around the block a couple times in this industry, so I'm very intrigued with what you're doing. So thank you again for bringing this forward and answering those questions. And, one thing, archery industry is a little different than most too, and I think you found this in many conversations, that when we look at the market, we're always looking at ways of making the pie bigger, not just making our piece of the pie bigger. And this is a very important topic for hunting, is how we make that pie bigger, not just compete for our piece of the pie.
It's really a non-threatening entry to the sport of hunting when you got archery, and then it goes next to guns. So people start to feel weapons are okay to shoot.
You might notice we're a little antsy up here because we got about 2 minutes to get across the street.
All right,
So,
go.
Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Farmer, this it always encourages me that there's not a government solution to everything. Obviously, governments are involved with your cities and your parks and so forth, but more than happy if there's barriers that we can work with you. Obviously, you're on our radar scope, and love to see this really come to fruition and help out the need that we have.
I'll let you know.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Representative, our Vice Chair St. Germain moves to excuse absent members. Being no objection, motion prevails by unanimous consent. We're planning to meet next week, September 24th. There being no further business before the meeting, the committee would stand adjourned.